So your electrolytes, your potassium.
Are you taking any electrolytes in?
So your electrolytes getting out of whack.
Electrolyte.
Electrolytes.
It feels like everybody in the health and fitness industry is talking about electrolytes right now. Logan Paul is selling them, Huberman is recommending them, Messi and Steph Curry have their own brands, and every second podcast has an ad read for some hydration multiplier with a sciencey sounding name. If you're into training, health, running, cycling, you've 100% heard of someone talking about electrolytes in the last month. But here's the thing, the health and wellness world kinda pulled a fast one on us. They created a problem, then sold you the fix, and it's working. For them, not for your wallet. So in this video, I'm going to break down the science of electrolyte supplements, why they're about as useful as a second belly button for 99% of people, and when they actually do make sense. My name is Adam, I'm a health and performance coach with a master's in nutrition, and currently I'm doing a PhD in human performance. If you want to work with me one-to-one to get in shape, then check out the link below. Electrolytes sound sciencey. They're essential minerals like sodium, potassium and chloride that help your body function. They keep your body's electrical system, fluid balance and chemistry working properly. Without them, you're dead instantly. So no one's arguing if they're important or not. The real question is, do you need to supplement with them? Like, do you really need to add salt to your water because you broke a sweat walking to your car in a hoodie? Let's break it down. Sodium and chloride are the king and queen of electrolytes. They're found in much higher concentrations in your blood than the others, up to 100 times more. Which is why if you flip over the packet of most electrolyte supplements, Element, Liquid IV, whatever, the first ingredient you'll see is sodium chloride, also known as table salt. You know, the kind of stuff you buy in a sack the size of a small child from Costco for $2. The stuff that the average person consumes 20 times more than they already need per day. So here's how the logic goes. You sweat, you lose salt, you must replace that salt fast, or your performance and health will drop and you will suffer, right? Simple logic. Not quite. The key most people and most companies don't explain is that what actually matters isn't how much sodium you lose in total, it's the concentration of sodium in your blood. That's the number that your body cares about. That is the number that your brain monitors. And the thing that affects that concentration more than anything else, water. Here's what most people don't realize. Sweat is actually saltier than your blood. That means when you sweat, your blood becomes more salty, not less. This is a good thing. It's your body's built-in safety mechanism to stop your sodium levels from dropping too low. Think of it like a pot of soup simmering on a stove. As the water evaporates, the soup gets thicker and saltier. That's what your body does when you sweat. It protects sodium concentration by losing more water than salt. Now, the rare situation where this goes wrong is called hyponatremia or water intoxication. It happens when someone drinks way too much water in a short space of time without replacing salt, and it dilutes your blood sodium levels to a dangerously low level. It's rare, but it does happen. One of the most extreme examples was in 2007 when a California woman died from drinking over 9 liters of water during a radio station contest. Sounds bizarre, I know, but people do insane stuff for money. When sodium levels get too low too fast, the water starts rushing from the blood into the cells to even things out, and when that happens in your brain, it swells, and well, that can be pretty fatal. Mild hyponatremia can also occur in slower, less experienced marathon runners, the kind of person who's out there for like 7+ hours and drinks way more water than they sweat. In those cases, it's not about the sweating that's the problem, it's the belief that more water is better. So we're not worried about how much sodium you have in total, we're worried about the balance between water and sodium. That's what affects performance, cognition and health. But here's the thing, for most people, even in long workouts, it's practically impossible to drink too much water. For example, in my last half marathon, I ran just under 90 minutes. Based on my sweat rate, which is pretty average, I probably lost about 1.5 liters of sweat. And I could only replace about 500 mils during the run, so I finished about a liter down and I felt totally fine. Now here's where electrolyte supplements do come into the conversation, because even though sodium doesn't directly impact performance, and that's been shown again and again in placebo-controlled studies, dehydration does. Most studies show that performance starts to drop when you've lost about 2% of your overall body weight through sweat. That's the line. And if you're not weighing yourself before and after training and measuring your sweat rate, then you basically have no idea how close you're getting to that line. So let's make it real. Marcus is a 100 kilo guy, 220 pounds, sweating about 1 litre per hour playing football. He'd need to play for 2 hours straight without drinking anything at all to hit that 2% drop. And that's before you even start to think about sodium. So when do electrolytes actually make sense? Well, here's where things get interesting. Dr. Alan McCubbin, who researches this stuff at Monash University, came up with a predictive equation to figure out when your blood sodium might drop low enough that it needs replacing. He says that unless you're replacing at least 70% of your sweat loss with water, you probably don't need to supplement with sodium at all because your blood sodium is actually going up, not down. That brings us back to the soup analogy. You're still simmering in this scenario. But once you start replacing more than 70%, now you're watering it down. And that's when sodium might need to be added back in. We don't want your brain swelling after all. To make things really simple, McCubbin says you should only consider sodium supplements if you can answer yes to all of the following questions. Number 1, are you trying to replace more than 70% of your sweat losses to avoid going over that 2% dehydration line? For example, if my guy Marcus does a 30-minute park run and he sweats half a litre, he's barely 0.5% dehydrated, nothing to worry about. But if he's out on an 8-hour bike ride and sweating constantly, now you might start to hit that threshold. Number 2, is your session longer than 4 hours? Because it's not just about the percentage, it's about the total volume of water turnover. A light sweat with the 15-minute treadmill jog and a bottle of water doesn't count. Number 3, is it physically possible for you to drink back 70% of your sweat losses? Because the higher your sweat rate, the harder it is to drink enough. And gut issues are a real thing in long endurance events. And number 4, is it practical to drink that much? If you're on a trail or in a game with limited chances to drink, the answer might be no. If you're not answering yes to all of those 4, then you probably don't need electrolyte supplements, at least not during exercise. But this doesn't just apply to athletes. People often ask about working in the heat, construction, firefighting, that kind of thing. Luckily, we have data. Well-land firefighters sweat loads, full gear, extreme heat, but studies show they actually get plenty of sodium from meals, so much so that researchers recommend them cutting back on the salt to avoid long-term health risks. Why? Because they're eating. They have breaks, they can get calories and they get salt from food, so unless your job doesn't let you eat, then you're probably covered. Now, there are a couple of edge cases outside of ultra-distance sports where supplementation might help. Fasting, particularly multi-day water-only fasts, has shown that in some small studies that sodium chloride can dip just below that normal range after 7 days, so researchers recommend salt supplementation, but interestingly, the other electrolytes didn't change much, likely due to the body's stored reserves, and keto or low-carb diets, because when you start a low-carb diet, insulin levels drop, which play a role in sodium regulation, and you might lose more through your kidneys. That's why people get this so-called keto flu, headaches, fatigue, brain fog. In the short term, adding salt or broth can help, but over time your body adapts and research more than backs this up. The more sodium you eat, the more sodium you excrete, and the less sodium you eat, the more sodium that you retain. So once you're adapted after a week or so, the need for extra sodium is kind of disappears. That's the pattern anyway. Electrolyte supplements aren't harmful, but for the vast majority of people using them, they are useless. It's not the first time that the supplement industry had tried to sell us useless products under the guise of being essential. I wasted thousands over my lifetime buying branched-chain amino acids. They were all the rage about 10 years ago, and while they too are technically essential, we get enough of them in our diet. Sure, people could do with a lot more potassium and magnesium in their diets, but you'll get far more from actually eating fruits and vegetables than you will from a dissolvable tablet, and you lose a trivial amount of these in your sweat anyway. If you're training for an ultramarathon in the desert, go for it. In fact, in what's known as the most dangerous foot race on earth, the Marathon des Sables in the Sahara Desert, they just use salt tablets. If you're on day 7 of a fast, then maybe toss some salt into your water. But if you're just doing a push day at the gym and then sipping on a branded pouch because your favorite podcaster who gets 30% commission told you it's optimal, you're most likely just drinking expensive salt water that's likely having zero impact on your health and performance. And the evidence on cramping is also really unconvincing as well. I'd be willing to bet money that in a blinded study you'd get the same benefit from a salt packet that you get in a McDonald's bag as you would from most of these electrolyte supplements. Now, there's a couple reasons why supplement companies might be selling these products to us. The first and most forgiving is that they simply don't understand the science. I've seen that with LMNT, at least on their homepage, since this is a new area of research. The second, which is more nefarious, is a classic marketing trick. Take something essential, imply deficiency, and then sell the fix. In the words of Asker Ukendrup, one of the most respected researchers in performance nutrition, if you're doing an hour in the gym every day, there's no need for electrolyte drinks or capsules or any other commercially available product. It will do no harm, but it will have no benefits either. If your goal is to improve your health, I would personally advise not buying electrolytes, as the chances you're sodium deficient are near zero, as it's not something that you can technically run out of. Companies marketing that they have some special ratio or special sodium is complete pseudoscience. Salt is salt, it all comes from a salt mine, so don't be tricked into thinking that the expensive stuff is somehow better either. If you're an athlete, a pinch of salt to taste will suffice for most people in most situations, and even in the more extreme cases where sodium is required, all you need is salt, at least if you want to follow evidence-based practices. If you enjoyed this video, then you might like the in-depth analysis I made on Element here.